Sermon on the Mount forms the backbone of Jesus' teachings in the Gospel of Matthew. And in the next three chapters, chapter 5, chapter 6, and chapter 7, it's kind of the crux of what Jesus is telling the people who they need to be, what they need to do. But it starts off with blessings. And that's the Beatitudes is the list that Mark was reading. And the Beatitudes, the Latin word beata is connected with blessings. And so it starts with blessings. Blessings for you. And when you hear it and you read it, and I'm going to call up my other text that I can actually read. It sounds, and you can understand why some people might be hesitant to receive blessings, because it starts off with blessed are you who are poor in spirit. And you can see people thinking, well, I'd rather not be poor. Luke just has blessed are the poor, but Matthew adds poor in spirit. And you're kind of like, oh, okay. And then it says, blessed are you who mourn. And they're kind of like, oh, really? Well, and then it goes, blessed are you who are meek. And again, it's kind of, people are thinking like, this doesn't really sound like blessings. And then it's, blessed are you who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And then it gets a little better. Then it says, blessed are you who are merciful. And so it's kind of like, okay, the other ones, it's poor, it's mourning, it's hungering for righteousness. But merciful, it feels more like, okay, I can accept this. And blessed are you pure in heart, and blessed are you who are peacemakers. So the next three are not bad, but then it gets, and you're kind of thinking, okay, I can get into this. And then it says, blessed are you who are persecuted and reviled for your name. So you can understand why some people read this and they would go, I'd rather not be blessed. Like, I don't want to mourn. I don't want to be poor in spirit. I don't want to see the need for righteousness when it isn't there. I would rather, be filled. I would rather not be poor. I would rather not need to mourn. And they think of blessing, and a lot of us tend to see blessings as we would with how the world sees blessings. Blessed are you who are rich, because you don't have to want for anything. Blessed are you who has a long life, and everyone else around you has a long life, because you will never need to mourn. Blessed are you who don't need God, because you have everything that you need already. And that's kind of where this starts to make a difference, because right away what Jesus is telling them is, blessed are you who need God, who aren't living under the false assumption that everything that matters in life you can obtain with your own hands. And these passages, the next three chapters are hard, because they will call us to do things that are not easy, like love your enemies. And so what Jesus is starting with these next three chapters, this teaching, he's starting with saying, this is not going to be easy. But if you are struggling, if you are poor in spirit, you are still blessed. Because when you are poor in spirit, yours is the kingdom of heaven. Even when you struggle, God is with you. When you mourn, blessed are you who mourn. And I liked the confession you had there, because mourning is woven, our love is woven into that. But it starts to become a very radical message that Jesus is giving. Because what Jesus is saying is, blessed are you who need God, because God will be with you. Blessed are you who understand that life will be difficult, that there will be challenges, that not everything will go your way, because I don't think for anyone, be you rich or poor, that life goes exactly as you desire. But if you know and see that you have God walking with you, there is a rich blessing in that. I have come for those who are suffering. I have come for those who are poor. I have come for those who are in need. And that's what Jesus is telling them right in the beginning. Before anything else, if you have a hard life, God will be with you. Now, does this mean that your life then everything will work out? No. But it does mean that in our difficulties, God still will care for us. And it makes a significant difference. We will all at some point mourn, because that is what life is. But I remember distinctly when my dad died, and I'd been here for a year. And I remember thinking like, oh, it was, you were probably blissfully ignorant of me at that point and kind of thought, oh, Gord, he's a nice guy. But you'd only known me for a year when my dad died, and suddenly the whole congregation, the support with, take your time, leave. You supported Pam and the kids flying out for the funeral. I was hurting. I was sad. I was grieving. But I was blessed by your support and your love. That for me represented the love and the support of God. It is that God walks with us in the hard times that we realize how much of a difference it makes to have God in our lives. When we are poor, we may suffer, but it's not the same suffering that we have if we have God with us. And the blessing comes not so much just knowing that we have God with us, the blessings also come with us following the teachings of Christ. And this is kind of where this starts to take off, because what it says is that we will be blessed when we choose to live and be merciful, when we choose to be kind, when we choose to be patient, when we choose to walk humbly with our God, when we choose to be meek and not arrogant and demand everything, when we choose to thirst for righteousness and hunger, even when we're okay, but when we see that others are not okay. That in picking up these burdens, we actually find the blessings of God. Last night, when I was in Manitoba this past summer, one of my relatives gave me a brief history of my grandfather, Opa. And last night, after reading this and thinking about this, I read it again. Actually, I read it for the first time. I couldn't read it for a long time because I would start up and there would be the pain and the anguish of my grandfather. For those who don't know, he was born in Russia, grew up on a farm there, and as he will say, the beginning part of his life was great. They had the relatives that lived right beside them. They had a farm. His father was a kind man. His father then had to leave for the war, where he worked not as a soldier but on the medical train, and had to also do some forestry work. But when he came home, he says, everything felt great. And then the troubles began. And because of when the Russian government collapsed, there were roving bands of bandits, and they were killing people for no reason at all. My grandfather talked about Peter Peters, who was just walking down the street, and people came up to him with swords and just killed him because he was a Mennonite. He was German. And you start to see in the anguish, the loss that they had to move their farm, they had to leave everything behind and go and live on my great-grandmother's cousins had a summer kitchen is what they would call it. But they had to live in this one-room little building, the whole family, for I think a year or so. Then they moved to a two-room. But coming from a prosperous farm, they lost everything. And my grandfather's writing about this, and he says one of his favorite memories of that time was his mom and his dad sitting with their backs to the warm stove, and their father had got a guitar, and he would play guitar, and the whole family would sing. And he says, that was a wonderful memory. And you realize that even in the midst of losing everything that they had, of the cattle, the farm, the equipment, the furniture, they had to leave it all behind, move into this single one-room building. And my grandfather speaks about the joy of just the family getting together and sing. Because there was kindness and grace. There was compassion and caring. It was interesting. He wrote that my great-grandfather was a song leader, and my grandfather was a song leader, and my mom and dad were very active in the choir and were very good singers. I do not know what happened. It's something happened, but I do not know what it is. But when I read this story, I am struck with how we are blessed. We are blessed when we take the love and the grace and the compassion of God and we make it part of who we are. When we choose to be those people, those who care for one another, who want justice for all people, who will put themselves in harm's way to make it a better world, not for themselves, but for others. It is not an easy life. It's not the blessing that many people would say that they would desire, but it is a much richer blessing because it does not rely on what the world will give you. It relies on who you decide that you will be. And that is what Jesus is telling them. Blessed are you who choose to be kind and compassionate, because even when the world is not, you will still feel the presence of God. Blessed are you who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because even when the world is unfair, you will still desire to be a fair, just person in this world. Blessed are you who mourn, because even in your sadness, you know that you are loved, and it is not the end. When we rely on the world to give us all the things, that I pray for things. I pray that the world will be just. I pray that we will have, enough to eat. And there's uncertainty right now with CSC and with chaplaincy. And so, I pray that things will work out. I don't know if they will. But I don't have to rely on being blessed by what CSC or the government of Canada or any of them decide. I am blessed because God loves me, and I lean into that love. And I share that love and grace, even in the face of uncertainty, even when I don't know how things will work. I can feel blessed because I choose to be the person God has called me to be, as best as I am able. It is in deciding who we will be, no matter what our environment, that we truly find our blessings from God. Lynn Adams was desperate for a job. She was running into a time when she might be evicted from her one-bedroom apartment, and she had tried all sorts of different jobs, was not having any luck. So in desperation, she accepted this job for the large department store that was in their city. It was part of a chain, but this was the first department store, and the owner was often walked through it. And she got a job there, but she realized the reason why she got the job is because it was a job no one wanted. It was returns and complaint department. So she was the front line of people who were bringing stuff back, and also the people who were complaining about the store and its merchandise. The first day she got there, and she met with the manager of that department and the human resource person, and the human resource person made a point of telling the manager that she had a 4-week trial and that he could not fire her for those first 4 weeks. And she thought that was strange until she found out from others that the last 3 people who had had the job had either quit within the first week or had been fired. And so she was a little apprehensive, but she thought, it's okay, I'm going to come with this with my best attitude and see where it goes. And so she got there. And the first thing that she saw, because she spent the first half day watching the other 2 people that were the front line for the complaints and returns department, and she saw them, and she realized that these were not happy people. That they looked for any reason they could find to reject anything that people wanted to return. And for their complaints, they were just dismissive. And she saw that these two people, who every day had people coming complaining and wanting return, had met all of that with anger and resentment and with no pity, no grace, no mercy. And what she didn't know was that the manager was very happy with these two people, because the manager received a bonus for if their department didn't return a lot of things, if their department didn't give out a lot of merchandise back, he would get a bonus. And so he had instilled in these two people to be as hard and harsh as possible with all the people coming for complaints. And within her first day there, she saw this young guy come, and he brought back some sneakers, and he said, look, these sneakers don't fit me. I bought them. I don't know what, I'm returning them. And the woman says, she picked them up, she looked, she goes, no, you wore these outside. These are scuffed, no return. And he goes, no, I stepped on the sidewalk once. She goes, no, they were outside. You can't return them. You bought them. You tried them on. They didn't fit when you tried them on the first time, obviously, but you still bought them. Not our problem. That's your problem. The young man left. And she saw that again and again, any reason they could find to reject a return, they did. So on her first full day on her own, the young man came back, and he had the shoes. And he saw that her line, because she was new at the time, he got into her line to return it. And he got there and he said, look, he says, I bought these shoes. I don't know why they fit well. They were snug, but I thought that they would stretch. They don't stretch. I need a good pair of shoes for my work. I got blisters on my first day. He goes, and I don't have money to buy another pair. I made a mistake. And she goes, well, she says, you've admitted that you wore them for the first day, and I understand that, you bought the wrong size, but she says, look, there's a defect on this shoe. I see the stitching, and she pulled it, is loose. Well, that's not a matter of size, that's just bad. I will return this, and unfortunately, we don't have a pair in this size. I'm going to have to give you one larger. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, thank you so much. She goes, look, I know what it's like to not have enough. I will gladly get you this pair. So she gave him that pair, and he left, and he was ecstatic. And within 10 minutes, her manager was there, because her coworker had saw what she did and had written her up in a complaint. And her manager said to her, look, you can't do this. This is not who we are. This is not what we do. We are a returns department, but the only thing we return is the customer. Do not do this again. She was like, okay. And she tried to be like her co-workers, but she couldn't. And so people kept coming back with stuff, and she kept finding reasons to return things to them. And or giving them refunds, which was even worse. And the more she did it, the more she got written up. And in the first 2 weeks, the manager again had a meeting with her and said, look, I can't fire you for 2 more weeks, but if you continue on this way, you know that you will be fired in 2 weeks. So you make this choice now. Who are you going to be? She needed the job. She really needed the job. And she went home that night and she thought about it. And the next day she came, and in the lunchroom, no one else from any of the other departments ate with the complaints and return department, because they were just angry all the time, and all they did was complain. And she looked at her 2 co-workers and she thought, I do not want to be like that. I don't want to become like that. And if it means that I must be hungry, if it means I must find another place to live, so be it. My life will be better if I have a glad heart and an empty stomach than if I have a full heart, or a full stomach and a hard heart. So the next 2 weeks, she just leaned into it. And her lineup for return, there would be no one for the other 2, and they would just sit there playing on their phones. And she would have a line that went out past the door. And the other 2 would say, here, I'll serve you. And they'd be like, nope, sorry. And she just returned things left, right, and center. The manager was fuming. But Human Resources told them 4 weeks, so 4 weeks. Last day on her 4th week, she knew she was done. But But again, she had a long lineup, and she was signing stuff away and so forth. Anything that required the manager's thing, she just signed on her own, and just like she was done, and she knew it, and she didn't care. She came to work, and she saw the people were so happy to see her, and she saw the relief and joy, and she knew that the general line was that, oh, these people are just ripping you off. She knew what it was like to be poor. She knew what it was like to buy something by mistake or have something break and need to return it, because you couldn't just replace it. And she knew that these people, was there maybe one or two out of the 25 that she would see in a day that came that were just taking advantage of the system? Maybe. But there were so many more people that needed it. And so she signed everything off, and at the end of the day, she just gathered up her stuff without having to be told. When suddenly there was a commotion, and the owner of the chain, but came and came into the department, and the manager was right always there, because anytime the owner came up, everyone wanted to be on their best behavior. The manager was sweating because he figured the owner was here because their department had basically blown through their returns budget. In a month, they had done more than they had done for the last 2 or 3 years. So the manager was there, and as the owner came, before the owner even said something, he goes, I just want you to know we're firing her right now. She is gone, and I am so sorry. Human resources made me keep her, and we will not make this mistake again. And the owner was a gruff, angry-looking man himself. And he said, who's Linda Adams? And the manager, she is, and I've just fired her. I just fired her. The owner doesn't even look at the manager. He looks at Linda Adams and he says, my granddaughter called me. And Linda's kind of like, yeah, the granddaughter called me for the first time in 6 months. I have not spoken to her in 6 months. My granddaughter was taught to despise me because my daughter despised me. Growing up, my daughter said all I cared about was business and wealth. And she was not wrong. But I tried to change with my grandchildren, but I did not get a chance because my children were filled with scorn for me. And so I never really get to talk to my granddaughter. But she called me 2 days ago. And she called me to tell me how proud she was of me and my department, because her friend had bought a pair of shoes here, and even though he'd been rejected the first time, he had then brought them back, and they had been replaced. And then she told me that word got around that the returns department in this store was fantastic, and that they were making a difference. I talked to my vice president of sales, and he told me that actually having a good returns policy can help us in the long run. But I don't care. What I care about, he says, is that my granddaughter called me. And my granddaughter was proud of me. I did not return these sneakers. I didn't even know about these sneakers. But you did. And you signed them away in my name, and your kindness and your mercy reflected on me to my granddaughter. What a gift, he says. You are not in this department anymore. You are now its manager. And I want you to train the people to be kind and compassionate, because at this point in my life, the money doesn't bring me joy. It doesn't bring me anything except more money. But my granddaughter's love, my granddaughter's seeing someone in me, So you are now the manager, and I ask that you teach people to be like you, so that my granddaughter might think more of me. Blessings are weird, because often the things that we think will be a blessing isn't. We think the easy, the good, the bright, the shiny, but it is often the hard times in our lives that form and shape and give us the lessons and the strengths that we need. It is often in mourning that we learn the value of the relationships and the friendships and the love that we have. It is often in the poor and the struggles that we realize the gift of when there is enough. It is often when we are persecuted that we realize there are things in this life worth being persecuted for. One other short story. When I was 17 years old, I worked as a camp counselor in the Canadian Sunday School mission camps in southern Manitoba, Turtle Mountain. And they had a very strict sort of understanding of what was right and what was not. And there was a young camper. I was 17. Most of the campers were like 15, 2 years younger than me. And there was one camper who had a Catholic Bible, which meant that the Apocrypha that I have even in this one, was seen as part of Scripture. And to be fair, Paul actually quotes parts of the Apocrypha as Scripture. But anyways, he had a Catholic Bible. And the people that were there, the authorities, the director, and the president of it, because he was there, were very concerned that he was reading the Catholic Bible. And they told him that he had to get rid of his Catholic Bible, that he would have the King James Bible that they would give him instead of this Catholic Bible, because that was not God's Bible, the King James was. And they told him this, and he refused to give it up. And so they asked me, I was the lifeguard. I got along well, even though I yelled at people a lot. But they said, Gord, go on a canoe trip with him, take him out onto the lake, and convince him to give up this Bible. So me and the camper, like I said, he was 50. He was bigger than I was. But we paddled out to the middle of the lake, and when we were there, I stopped, and there was no one else around. I said, so about your Bible. And he turned around the canoe. We didn't tip, but he turned around and he said, he says, my family doesn't go to church. We don't know much about God. But when my family decided that I should come to this camp, they were so excited. They said, this is great. You're going to learn about God. We can't teach you, but they'll teach you there. And this is our family Bible. And he says, my family's name, it was given to us from the church. Our names are in it. They gave me this Bible. And they said, read this and get to learn on how to use this book. And he says, so they sent it to me, and there was a lot of joy that they gave me the Bible to bring to camp. He says, I can't throw it away. Like, they would be devastated. And you saw that sense of he was unsure of what to do. He wanted to do what the directors were telling them and his counselors were telling him, but he also had that kind of stubbornness of like, this is what my family gave me, this is what I will hold on. And I stood there sat there in the canoe, and I had a moment of, because I wanted the directors of the camp to think well of me. I wanted to be in everyone's good grace. I wanted to be the counselor that could get things done that other counselors couldn't get done. I wanted to be praised. I was 17 years old. There was also a female counselor that I wanted to impress. And I sat there and I looked at him and I realized that he was waiting to see what I would say. And that if I told him that this was not the right Bible, that he would probably listen because he trusted me. And again, it was one of those clear moments where God basically kind of has to cuff me over the head, where God, it was clear to me. I said to him, that Bible is the Word of God. Hold on to it, read it. Don't just have it, read it, but do not let them take it away from you. Because your family gave that to you. That Bible is as good as any other Bible you will find here, as long as you read it. And he lit up. His face, he was like, oh, thank you. And I tell this story because what I realize is that I was blessed. At that moment, I got back, and they right away, in that sort of secretive way, they said, Gord, come here, come here. And I went, and they said, so? And I said, I told them to keep the Bible. And they looked at me like I had two heads, and there was just this sense of disappointment, like, oh, like we thought you better of you, we thought you would. And I remember feeling just incredibly blessed. Not because of what they were saying, but because of the moment that his face lit up and just the ability to be kind and compassionate to him. I didn't get thought of well after that. I didn't get promotions or anything like that. But that's what the world offers us. You know, the world will offer us all sorts of different things to try to convince us this is who we should be. But choose kindness. Choose mercy, walk humbly, be the peacemakers in the midst of crisis. This will not make our lives easier. In fact, it will be the exact opposite. Our lives are harder when we thirst and hunger for righteousness for everyone. It is easier for us just to take care of ourselves. It's easier for us not to care about anything or anyone else. But our lives are so much more of a blessing when we do care, when we do hunger and thirst, when we are peacemakers, when we are merciful. Because then not only will we receive mercy, we will truly be blessed.